do I turn it on? Greetings, whether this is morning, afternoon, or evening to you. Today marks the conclusion of our journey through the seminar series, Lessons on Innovation from Other Sectors. Driven by a shared vision as members of the Scientific Program Committee, Sergio Campos and I embarked on this journey over the past year. Along the way, we've been joined by exceptional individuals who have contributed their brilliance to our cause. Geneva, our talented young SPC, Marcello Bassani from IDB with the steady support of Rafael. Let's not forget Leonela, the maestro of today's proceedings. Janice Beecher and Matthias Finger also joined us, bringing inquisitive minds to explore the intricacies of network industries, navigating the uncharted waters of innovation in the pathway to a decarbonized economy. In the context of this transition, pursuing fairness remains an essential yet unfulfilled objective. Yesterday, Janice and I had an enlightening conversation with Joan Rose, another SPC member, who shared the uplifting feedback she received from numerous participants of this World Water Week. The water world has attracted renewed interest, with more individuals eager to venture in the sector. All of us share a commitment to SDG 6, and the sense of urgency within the water community is noticeable. The moment calls for the harmonious convergence of both public and private capitals, guided by effective regulations and empowered by technological advances. Allow me to share a recent personal experience. Last Friday, my flight to Stockholm was delayed due to a technical glitch in the aircraft. With only a daily departure from Rio, the airline faced a challenge. The necessary technical expertise was not available locally. The solution came through a digital twin connecting technical experts in Amsterdam with local people on the ground. The concept of digital twins, once considered a distant future, now bridges the gaps in our daily lives, contributing to improved operational performance even across oceans. This reality resonates deeply with me. Over a decade ago, I established a center that has since evolved into a dynamic force. More recently, we launched a new initiative leveraging data science to develop knowledge on infrastructure. We've collaborated with utilities over the past years through applied research driving AI and machine learning projects to enhance efficiency and resilience through network industries. The projects span the entire value chain, from understanding the impacts of climate change on assets to holding and aiding companies in strategic decision-making while collaborating with regulators to advance regulations. During a tech session held Monday morning, Waterplan, a startup company, introduced a project reminiscent of an electricity venture we are also extending to water. Indeed, we are effectively harnessing knowledge we have cultivated across sectors, including water, energy, and transportation, focusing on sustainability. In a recent conversation, a fellow SPC member referred to us as connectors. Janice, Matthias, and I are indeed connectors. The same concept applies to today's speakers, Rosanna from E+ Energy, Tobias from IKEA, and Sushi Vora. Our focus may pivot between industries, but our commitment to learning and disseminating knowledge on water remains a constant. But rather than continuing to dwell on my narrative, I urge you to join us in launching the session we've crafted to captivate and engage you, starting with Marcello and Will, who I invite to join the stage. Thank you.
Hello, hello. Well, hi everybody. I'm very pleased to be here. I'm thrilled to be here with my colleague and friend, Will Sarney. I think he doesn't need introductions. He's possibly one of the greatest advocate for water in the water sector in this modern, complex world we live in. So, Will, how are you?
I'm tired. How are you?
I'm exhausted, by the way, but please.
I thought I'd be transparent with you. No, I'm good. It's great to be back. I was not here last year, and it's good to see friends and exchange ideas.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we have 5 minutes, basically, to.
I thought we had 7.
Well, now 6, I guess, maybe.
Well, we're burning it up quickly
I
by
know.
banter, so I'm sorry. Dive into it, so to speak.
Hey, we have 5 minutes to change the world, to transform the sector. So, well, I want to ask you like 3 questions tonight. And the first, we have been hearing a lot this week that the sector is slow to innovation. Is slow, is difficult, is complicated. Why do you think the sector, if you think so, why do you think the sector is slow to open up to innovation? Why is it difficult to innovate in the water and sanitation sector?
Well, I think you know my answer to this, that yes, the water sector is slow to innovate. I believe it's slow to innovate for a couple of reasons. One is that it's just like every other industry sector. There is an installed base, the status quo, that will resist fiercely innovation. It's just the way it is. So the question is, how do you change the installed base of stakeholders that really have no incentives to innovate? The second is that, on one hand, the water sector is not unique, and it's also very unique. It's a public health issue. It is a very visceral issue. It's got multiple dimensions and so on. So I think it's really a matter of it's just like every other sector. And then on the other hand, it's very unique based on, some very human attachment to water.
Absolutely. I think you're very right, actually, at this point. I think regulation didn't help much up to now because, we are very worthy also to guarantee the access to a basic human right, which is water, and possibly this has played a little bit against opening up a little bit to innovation.
Yeah, it's, no one wants to take a risk, whether you're in the public sector, utility sector, or even industrial users, although, they appear to have a greater appetite for at least experimenting with innovative technologies and innovative business models. So, I think in terms of how do we pull the levers to accelerate innovation in the water sector, and we draw from the renewable energy sector, I believe here, is that deliver solutions directly to customers and consumers, democratize access to data, actionable information. I think if people really knew what the issues were around water, like real-time water quality at the tap, instead of, just ingesting it and not knowing what the quality is, it would be a game changer. And you would mobilize the consumer and customer base in a very different way.
Absolutely. And actually, I take you a little bit to dig a little bit more on other sectors. Why do you think it's so important to learn from other sectors?
Well, to go back to we're not that unique, yet we are unique. So it's, what can we learn from, I would say, power generation in particular? And one thing that I tend to focus on is digital technologies. So digital transformation, regardless of the sector, has a lot of similarities that the water sector faces, and I guess it's time. So I don't know. That was the fastest 7 minutes.
It was very, but the content was great.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that. I feel like we could keep talking.
But I'm going to steal 30 more seconds. I think there's one question is burning, and I think it's very important to address it. When we talk about innovation, we talk about failure also, a trial and error. Can we afford failure in the water sector? And is it possible, do you think, to learn from failures from other sectors?
Yeah, I mean, failure is important in the scheme of things, and minimizing risk. Again, it's a public health issue. If you're a utility, you want to de-risk technologies, but there are ways to do that. So yeah, failure is important. Unfortunately, if you're a startup, the probability that you will fail is incredibly high. But that doesn't mean you don't learn from it, and those failures have an impact in changing thinking and behavior and so on. So yeah, failure is an important part of it, and how do we learn from it, and how do we ensure that there's an impact that changes the status quo and gets the installed base to relent.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you, Marcello. Good to see you.
Leo, please come to the stage.
Thank you very much, Joysa, Will, and Marcello for this wonderful opening of this third session and last on learning on innovations from other sectors. My name is Leonela Barreto Dillon, and I'll be your moderator today. So, guess what we're doing today? We are going to listen from what other sectors have done, and then we're going to try to see what can we learn and what can we do then in our water sector. So we have divided this session into two parts, okay? So the first part, we will have the energy sector, the consumer goods sector, and the transport sector. So we will listen from their case studies, how have they actually managed to innovate? So we will have Rosana, who will be joining us from Brazil, and she will tell us about digitalization in the energy sector. Then we have IKEA, listen to this, IKEA is in the room, and we will hear how do they innovate, and we want to know how they do it, how they manage. And then we will have Matthias, who will tell us how they have tackled issues, problems in the transport sector, and how they have actually innovated. So after each of these questions, these inputs, we will only answer one question, okay? So you all please sing in our Slido platform, and as our speakers talk, then ask questions, and only one will be answered, the one with more votes, okay? Yes, we don't have much time. So we will do this 3 times, and then it will be your time to work in, let's say, in pairs, in groups, in your tables, thinking, so what have we learned from what Matthias, Tobias, or Rosanna said, and how can we implement it in our water and sanitation sector? So you will be writing your inputs of, what can we do? How can we apply these learnings in Slido? And then we will have a plenary session here discussing your inputs. That's the first part. Is it clear? All right. The second part, we will be with Suchi, who will tell us about the culture of failure. It will also be very dynamic, and so we ask you to please keep tuned. And then, we will be talking about that. And finally, Janice will be here with us, telling us the key recommendations, how to innovate in the sector. Is that okay? Sounds good? All right, so without further ado, we will ask our friend from Brazil, Rosana. Rosana, hi. So Rosana is the Dr. Rosana Santos, Executive Director of E+, Energy Transition Institute in Brazil. So the floor is yours, and please make some questions. Thanks.
Hello, everybody. I think someone will pass the presentation. So I thank for that. So I'm after many years working in the utility sector, in electricity sector, I decided to join the third sector, the civil society sector, which is the E+, which is a quite interesting point of view because you see all the sectors integrated and how things make difference in people's life. So I will share with you here what I'm sharing with you is a little bit of my experience, my whole life experience in the electricity sector, but in particular, my 3 last years that I spent with Enel, working on some digital solutions that Enel is being using around the globe. So I hope I can bring some insights. Of course, it's a huge problem that we have. There are lots and many of solutions in different parts of the sectors, but I'll try to bring some insights, okay, just to foster discussions in afterwards. So what's the problem that we were always dealing with when we are working in this network world? First, it's a problem of you solve and you dimension your system to attend peak demand and to avoid congestion. But sometimes, and in the lower demand part of the day, then you have a lot of infrastructure that is simply there and not being used. And this is not as efficient as it could be. There is also, because of energy transition and everything that we are facing in the energy sector, we need a lot of operational flexibility, meaning we have to shift from one source to the other. We have to increase one source and diminish the other in order to avoid the service to stop. And also, there is a very important, it's being more and more important to give the final consumer the right price signal. Even if it's a subsidized price signal, it has to be the right one. So how are we going to get all those things with the traditional technology that we were used to deal with like 10 years ago? And on the consumer side, there is a high and a growing need for a control over the electricity bill itself, meaning the consumer has and want to be more in control of what they are paying the end of the month. In the end, this is that. And to have tools to control that and to use their behavior in order to moderate their electricity bill. Also, they want more, what do we say, the consumer empowerment, meaning they want to buy energy from different suppliers. They want to be able to sell some service to their grid. Why not? And there are a bunch of things that we are trying to solve here. So next slide, please. So what I bring here is the innovation here is the digitalization. First, this square, the yellow square here is the electricity grid, the entire electricity grid, from the generation point of view to the consumer point of view. All the purple, not purple rows, more or less purple dots that you see on the graph is where the electricity sector has added digital interfaces. Meaning you have now more data on how much energy is being produced at each second of the day, how the transmission lines, the presentation is gone, how the transmission lines are working, how are the consumers consuming, what are their demand curve, how overcharged are the grids, for example, are they in an overcapacity? Do they have enough capacity to attend a certain amount of consume? And in the end, for example, at household level, then when you digitalize the interface between the household and the grid, you have on-time and online information on how that consumer is consuming. If the consumer has, for example, auto production of solar auto production of energy, for example, of electricity, you know how much they are producing. And on the other hand, the consumer has much more influence and knowledge about their own consumption. So what I say is that data is good, more data is key, and on-time data is heaven for the ones operating the system. And this was a huge innovation because it brings a lot of operational efficiency and decreases, in the end, decreases the total capex, or the total tax that we say that you need, the amount of money that you need to operate the system. Next slide, please. So going into going to very quickly into what Enel has done. Up to date, Enel has more or less 45 million smart meters, the one that was market there, installed in the world. So a lot of experience. Mainly Spain and Italy are our, let's say, our field, or our test field is where we tested a lot of different ways of doing this smart metering, and including in Italy, for example, this smart metering is also measuring water, and it's also it's electricity, water, and other services can be measured by the same meter, meaning that you can share the cost of the meters with other sectors and integrate everything in a single meter. And the consumer will have control on the gas bill, water bill, and electricity bill in the same meter. This is possible with the technology. Next slide, please. It's a lot of possibilities that you have. For example, during COVID, it was really, really important, the smart metering, because when you had to recover a system, to cut or reconnect someone, you could do that remotely. You don't need to go there and do on time and in-person readings, for example. You can do it remotely. You have a sensor that says to you if there is a problem in the grid, or if there is not a problem in the grid. But I'll concentrate my chat on those two things that I put in square here. One is, can you enlarge it, please? Yes. One is the multi-services metering that I mentioned before. And the other one is some of the things that this smart metering can enable. It enables the customer, the consumer, to do what we call demand response, meaning if the utility asks the consumer to decrease demand in a certain point of time and pay for that, then these customers decrease the demand, and you don't have any kind of overcharge or overuse of the grid, okay? Then the consumer has on-time and online demand curve assessment, can project and compare with the neighbors to know if they are consuming more or less than the neighborhood, in order for him to understand if he's consuming above average level. And you have also a bill control, efficiency on bill control. We did a small test, and this is real time, okay? We did a small test with a bunch of smart metering in a region in São Paulo. It's about 300,000 meters that installed in the region. And by giving the consumers the right information, they could decrease in average their electricity bill by 6%. This is not neglectable, and it's a huge, I think it's a huge success from the consumer point of view. Next slide, please. Then Joisa was saying, this is another point that I want to bring. Joisa was saying about the digital twin. So what also in São Paulo, what was done is Enel had digitalized the grid, meaning there is a digital twin of an entire neighborhood, from the underground level to the ground level, and also at the air level. Meaning, for example, if a tree is growing, is there, you know which kind of tree it is, and you know the growth rate of that tree, so you can plan to go and cut that tree when it's necessary. With the underground, underground mapping, we can know where the gas pipelines are, where all the water pipelines are, and plan all the interventions in the city in order for one not to interfere with the other. So it's a great tool. And also, for example, you can train all the electricians and everybody in that grid, because you have a digital twin. You can play and train everybody. So this digital twin is something that is being used for operational efficiency. Just one last slide and I finish, please. this last slide is what are the barriers? So it's complex communication protocols, meaning you need Wi-Fi, internet, radio, and so on. So all those protocols, it's a very technical thing, but it's very important. But then the other four is keep the consumer-centric solution, meaning you should never forget that in the end, you have to have a culture that involves the consumer, that trains the consumer. Cost and price impact, which can be controlled if you go for mass deployment instead of only pilot projects. And in general, change management, meaning the government doesn't know that, your employees doesn't know that, your customer doesn't know that. So you have to work in a network of communications and well-fed information for everybody in order for this to be something useful for the society. This was done in Italy. This was on the process of being done in São Paulo. That's it. Thank you.
All right. So yes, is there? I'm checking. There are two questions that we have asked. Let's see next. All right. Okay. So I'm gonna just pick the first one. Rosanna, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. I'm here.
It says, how can regulation prevent the consumer from overpaying? Is the technology really beneficial to electricity users? Short, please, the answer.
There are good cases and bad cases in this regard. Sometimes you can, for example, the example that I've given in the consumer having more detailed information on how he is consuming and controlling this consumption, they can have up to 6% decrease in electricity bill. But for example, if you go for a really complicated time of use tariff structure, the consumer doesn't really grab all the details there, and this might be not an issue. So your answer is not a one answer. That depends very much on the case. Okay, sorry for not being straight, but it's a huge answer here.
Great. Thank you very much, Rosanna. Thank you for joining us from Brazil. And don't go anywhere. We have a workshop later. But now we're going to call to the stage Tobias Svanberg. He's an innovation leader in the water and at IKEA in Sweden. So tell us, how do you guys innovate at IKEA? Welcome.
Do I run this myself? Yes, IKEA is in the room. Yes. We at IKEA, we actually do all we can to reduce our water use across everything we do. Not only product range, which is my focus area. Should I be closer? This close. Oh. Not only on product range, but also we are rethinking our food, the IKEA food range. We are rethinking our materials we're doing. We are rethinking our supply chain. We look on water as what we call a strategic topic, a part of the bigger strategic subject of climate. That's where the water topic sits in the agenda. And it all starts with the IKEA vision, to create a better everyday life of the many people. And that's where actually the first learning I want to share is coming from. The company culture or any organizational culture is really important for create the change, to enabling an environment where you encourage change, you encourage what we call create a better. For us, that is continuous improvement, something that is, you need to continuously evolve and do things better. To continuously do that, you need to innovate. So that's already stated in our vision. And for the many people for us, that means affordability, reaching the many with a low price so all can use it or, of course, purchase our products. That's another important part of the culture itself is to encourage or at least accept also failures. Because when innovating, you will most probably fail more than you succeed. then it's very important to have a company culture in totality that is accepting this and even encourage failing. It helps you and encourage you moving on. Let's put this a little bit in a context why IKEA work with water. And I don't need to state the obvious to this audience, I think, either online or here, about water scarcity and water stress. But a couple of years ago, when we did our internal research, we found out that 400 million of the IKEA visitors, our visitors to our stores or our customers, they live in high or even extremely high water stress. That is, of course, the starting point why we strategically start to work with water and try to make products, solutions that helps a more water efficient living. I'm on the wrong paper, that's why, yes. And a little bit depending on how and where you live, you use water a little bit differently. But we know if you generalize Europe, each of us here, we use about 150 liters per person per day. Every day, all of us. And then how do we use that? Yeah, we flush down about 40 liters per day. We use almost 20 liters just for laundry, cleaning our clothes and so on. Most of it we shower and we use 60 to 80 liters just while showering. And that we do every day. And learnings from this, for this audience, is the importance to have relevant insights to what you do in your organization, what your topic is and how you address it. To have the relevant insights, knowing where to act to maximize the impact. And for us, this is of course, we want to focus on shower. That's where we can maximize the impact to make a better impact and better results. I realize I need to speed up a little bit, okay? I want to share 3 different water projects or innovations we are doing. I start with something we called Åbäcken, a water nozzle. This is a small water nozzle that retrofits to any tap in your home and drastically reduces the water flow out of the tap. Our learnings in this is for us from the beginning where we set price target. We keep that price target, which is rather aggressive, you see it there. That is one of the absolute key learnings. To achieve the result and manage the product itself, we needed to open cross-borders, cross-industry new collaborations. And in this example, we worked with a very, very small innovator or a startup company. And in the later stage of the project, we needed to bring in an industrial expertise to make the splitting of the water to enable that mist coming out of that nozzle. So opening new collaborations from all different levels. Learnings from this one. Second one is a Svogan, it's a water meter. It's also a retrofit solution that we like in IKEA, of course, that you can install it to any product in your home. This one measures in real time while showering. It attaches to a shower mixer like you see on the picture, and measures in real time the time you spend in the shower, how much water you're using, and also the temperature. And here we want to more drive awareness and encourage people to understand how long time do you spend in the shower and so on. The product itself doesn't change anything. It doesn't influence the water use or anything. It just drives awareness. And by this, we want to encourage and inspire to a behavior change, where you get an idea and you realize something that you might not were knew about before. Rosanna mentioned in one of the slides a competition, for example. This is a very interesting takeaways we get from product tests on this. Within the family, suddenly there is a competition. Who can shower in 12 minutes? Who can do it in 6 minutes? And suddenly someone doing it in 5 minutes. This is driven by the awareness, of course. This is an interesting learnings, the takeaway, this gamification part of comparing and competing a little bit. The third project, it's not a product yet, it's a project. It's what we call a water recycling shower. It's a little bit another level of complexity. Here we want to disrupt and really change the way we shower, and we want to create the future of showering. Jump over a little bit to be fast here. Our learnings on this project, which is much more complex. When we do product tests with this product, it's obvious when people realizing that you save water, but you also save energy. And when you save energy, you save on your energy bills, and then you save money. Money talks, money is directly relating to people. And when you see that benefit, you quickly overcome the border of installing a rather complex product solution. So here the learning is money talks. So summarizing, repeating a little bit, 30 seconds. Affordability, already mentioned, super important. We work with set a price target on our product solutions from the beginning. Make the benefits visual, obvious to the users. Why should I do this? It's coming back to me immediately. Convenience, to have any chance to change behavior, habits, it needs to be more convenient than the way you did it yesterday. So convenience and limiting the obstacle to the max to make it as convenient as possible. Collaboration, as mentioned before, cross sectors, cross industry, cross different people with different experiences, all the way from creative innovators to industrial experts. New collaboration is needed to create new innovations. The company culture or the organizational culture is really important as well to encourage to do things differently. And make it fun, inspire to a change. That's the most important maybe in our work. Thank you, super quick.
Thank you very much, Tobias. So we have 2 questions, and I'll just pick one because the votes are the same. They say, okay, to IKEA. Do you have any data that shows installing a water meter on the showers results in using less water?
Not yet proven on big scale on this product, but we know from insights previously by smart metering, where you inform the user on daily basis rather than monthly or bi-monthly the water bill, you can get savings up to 40% of the totality of water savings. So this awareness, what you use, drives a dramatic change of your use.
All right. Thank you very much. He will be around, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll go to our 3rd case. It is, let's see, you help? No, okay. So we will ask Matthias Finger. He is professor of the Istanbul Technical University, and he will tell us about the transport sector and what can we learn from them. Welcome, Matthias.
Thank you very much. I was asked to introduce myself a little bit, but I'm not going to read. You see, I have several hats. There are 2 main things, I think, that are important in my career. Interdisciplinarity. I work in infrastructures. They are technology, they are economics, and they are politics. And if you don't link them together, you don't understand the issues in infrastructures. They're always technological and institutional issues. The second point, along my career, I came more and more, and that's the last point there, into a systems view. Everything is related. Water is energy, transport is energy, energy is transport. They're all the telecommunication, digitalization links everything together. So, and because of densification, all these infrastructures are actually highly related to each other. You cannot dig up the ground without running into pipes of different sorts and cables and things like that. So I could have chosen another example because I started my career in the postal sector, but I opted against it because, are you still writing letters? Maybe that's not a good learning. So I opted for urban transport. What is the problem to solve? The problem to solve is congestion, pollution, the car in the city. it's not really the car itself, it's the ownership of the car. The fact that everybody owns an individual car, which is used about 4% of the time on average, filled with 1.2 people, a highly inefficient thing. Okay? You can hardly find anything more inefficient than the individual car. Of course, people need to move. We need cars. But maybe it would be good to have them more filled, better use, not standing around and using space that can be used for other things, green infrastructures or housing. So this is a systemic problem, because I took the picture also. You have the metro here, you have the car, you have the pedestrians, they cannot cross. You have the public transport, maybe those are public transport buses, maybe they're private, you don't really know, but there you have so many different actors, and none of these single actors can solve the urban congestion pollution problem. Much more acute than in Stockholm, but go to an emerging country. So what is the innovation? The innovation is, first of all, a technological innovation. I'm coming back to the digitalization. I think digitalization is something that helps. Yes, that helps. I try to put my watch, but it doesn't really work. So please show me. So digitalization has the potential to link all these separate actors that are uncoordinated, that operate in their own silos. But of course, it takes entrepreneurs to make that happen. It doesn't just happen by itself. It's not there's no techno fix. So the digitalization has the ability to link the different transport actors around the city, including the individuals who walk. 40% of the distance in the city is still done by walking. So all that is, and there's congestion on the walking as well. So the innovation is called mobility as a service that you get on your app. The inventor, I wouldn't say of the thing, but of the concept of mobility as a service, comes from Finland, from the technology, from the telecom sector, and you know, he basically said, thanks to a digital interface, we can better coordinate. You get a service on your app in the same way as you get a telecom service, and you move around. Now, what are the bad? It sounds good, sounds fantastic. And it is a business, but there are a lot of barriers to innovation. Okay? So the barriers to innovation are, of course, first, physical. If you want to choose, so you want to get from A to B, and you have to put your bike here. There's no place to put the bike. Then you go in the metro, then you go in a taxi, then you walk, maybe you take a train. These things are not adjusted. You have to walk in between. They're not at the same hops, things like that. There's physical obstacles to do that in the beginning. Then, of course, there you can support that digitally. You have to walk 3 minutes, you know exactly. And then you have to go into planning, because in the future, you have to plan according to that. Each transport mode is a silo. The train people don't speak to the metro people. The tram people don't speak to the pedestrians. The new cycling apps don't. So you understand it. Data are not standardized. Everybody is producing their own data, but they are not standardized. They are not fully exchangeable. You have the most important problem, jurisdictional problems. The urban system is much larger than the political city. You have in every major city. I'm now working in a city in the world which is one of the very rare cities where the political city is identical to the geographical city. This doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. All of these, the operators, of course, don't want to share the data. It's strategic. They want to have their own app, which are not compatible. And of course, as said in the very beginning, there's also a lack of innovation culture. Now, my last slide, what are the measures to overcome these? And we are working on it. It's not, mobility as a service is not really yet a full reality, but it is in certain cities. We have to have a well-crafted mobility transformation strategy at the urban level, in building, in planning, and things like that. A little bit of competition among the different modes, because if the tram doesn't come, you can maybe take a taxi or an Uber or something like this. So that can be favored and put some pressure. We need absolutely a coherent data policy. And that's a big challenge because the EU is working on it, every government is working on it, and the city is working on it, but they're of course not the same. And most importantly, I think the first step where we see things changing are a metropolitan transport authority, a new authority, an institution that combines the different actors at the metropolitan level. And of course, an ecosystems approach where people are sharing the data, and a culture where data are shared, where the different actors of the ecosystems see that it's to the benefit of. Now, to conclude, of course, the car is suffering, but the major obstacle is not the car industry. The major obstacle, the car industry has understood that they have to become more efficient. But the major problem are the different actors and the lack of coordination among them. Thank you very much.
Okay, so there are not that many questions, but I have here one. It says, what are the lessons from the MAAS concept that could be transferred to address the challenges to the water sector faces? Are you aware of the MAAS?
Mobility as a service.
Mobility as a service.
Yeah, I think that the major learning from that is that you need a systemic view. And a little bit, I was inspired, water is not just water, it's energy, it's I don't know, it's pipes, it's plenty of things. So I think if you can get the actors of all the actors that gravitate around the water into a systemic approach, I think the change, and that you can learn from mobility as a service.
All right, thank you very much. Okay. So now that we have heard what has happened with Enel in the energy sector, IKEA has shared a little bit, the transport sector and this systemic way, it is time for us to get to think of how can we apply the lessons on innovation from the energy, consumer goods, and transport sector to our own water sector. So what we ask you is to talk to your colleagues. You can talk also in the table, in the groups, in group of 3. And then we have about 10 minutes to think of, okay, so what did the energy sector do, what IKEA did, what just Matthias mentioned, and how can we actually transfer it to our reality? Think of a particular input from our speakers, think of a particular case, issue, problem that we're having, and what can we then learn from what they have told us, okay? So I'll keep checking on time with you. Let's make it 10 minutes. And then your inputs, please bring it as well here and Slido. We will be then showing the inputs and then discussing some of them in about 10, 12 minutes, okay? All right, so talk among you and let's see what can we learn. Go ahead.
Hi everyone online. I hope you could hear me. And my name is Geneva. I've been the Young Scientific Program Committee member for this group. And so Rosanna and I are here in the online discussion with all of you so that we can kind of have, continue this discussion that they are having in the room here online. So it's kind of, that same question. So I invite everyone who feels comfortable to turn their video on or just to, unmute yourself. If you have thoughts kind of towards this, how can we apply the lessons on innovation from either of the three cases we've heard? So from energy, from consumer goods, and IKEA, and or from the transport sector to our own sector. And I assume for most of us, that's water and sanitation. And I'll let people raise their hands, but as we do, Rosanna, do you have any initial thoughts as someone in energy about what we can be doing in water?
Yeah, it's nothing related to the technology itself, but it has to do with that thing consumer centric that I put there, because we developed our infrastructure, both the electrical sector and the water sector, pretty much based on the infrastructure itself. The consumer was just something that it was laying there and consuming. And I think it's quite important to put the consumer in the middle of the problem, in the middle of the solution of what you are trying to do, trying to accomplish. We need everybody to cooperate. This is more or less what the guy said, the professor said for the transport sector as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And for context, I work at a public water utility in the United States in San Francisco area. So a lot of these issues are very relevant that we've been hearing. And I think, we're often the public water utility and wastewater utility implementing. And I think some of the things you said were really interesting to me too, because you're talking about, smart meters and kind of, digitization, digital twins as being solutions. And I think one challenge that I've been confronting as a public water utility is, we would like to install smart meters so that we have all those benefits for the consumers that you talked about. But we've faced a lot of pushback even from our own, board, et cetera, just around the cost and kind of the big barriers to actually installing this technology. And I'm curious from your point of view, knowing what Enel did, do you have any recommendations for us in water for how to kind of sell this idea of smart meters better, especially in terms of the cost of installation and getting the system in place?
It's clear. One thing that was clear to me in Sao Paulo, for example, the exercise that we did in Sao Paulo, is that you have to have a real cost benefit analysis for any implementation. Meaning the benefits should be the benefits for the society, not only for the utility. And this is where we find it wrong. And if the benefits for the society are greater than the benefits for the utility, then this is where sometimes some public money should flow in and help install this infrastructure. And this was the case, not the case in Sao Paulo. We chose two areas where this was not the true. But if I may say, you have to have a very conscious CBA, cost benefit analysis. And we do have a methodology developed for that. The European unit has a methodology for that. If you want, I can share with you afterwards.
I would love that personally. And I see that I think Sergio Campos's hand was up. Did you have thoughts to chime in?
Yes, Geneva, thank you very much. Two things that in regards to the first question that you asked, sort of two takeaways that I get from the presenters. I really like the IKEA notion of you have to rethink every process that you do. And I think that in water and sanitation, we should really engage to the clients, to the customers, to the beneficiaries, and really start from there to the beginning. Maybe some of them don't necessarily want the type of infrastructure that we're providing them. Maybe there's an in-between that just didn't think about. That's one of the things. And then from the colleague from transport, when he says, if you're talking about transport, you're talking about energy, you're talking about water, you're talking about telecommunications, and that is true, and that's something that we, in the preparation of the seminar, we've been talking about it. But it's nice to hear it from someone else, because all of them are interrelated. So that's my contribution.
If I may, yeah, you are very, very much right. meaning the consumer centric. And just one thing to add, sometimes the consumer doesn't want something because the consumer wasn't presented properly with the benefits and the setbacks of that solution, that particular solution. He just takes a non-educated decision because he doesn't know. So if he doesn't know, he keeps doing the same because it's the known part of life. So you have to be able to communicate.
We have 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes. So right, please. Yes, your inputs. Great.
And you were
Okay.
saying?
No, it's. I agree with the colleague, but one thing that we learned is that before asking the consumer something, do you want or don't want, you have to prepare the consumer with the right information for the consumer to be able to take an educated decision, or at least halfway educated decision, with also with the consequences of what you're doing.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. And I also, so as we're kind of in here and talking about it, I invite all of you as the online audience, even if you don't want to speak out loud, to enter, your thoughts into this
Right.
Slido. So I put the link in the chat, and that way, the panelists are also going to kind of speak to their
So we have
thoughts.
3 more minutes, but we don't want to lose more participants that I see them running in the back door. We have 3 more minutes, but you think you need more time, or we can discuss already?
I think we can wrap it up.
I think we have enough. All right, great. Okay, so Matthias and Tobias. Matthias and Tobias, yeah. Yeah, let's see what type of input. See, we're here. Great. Let's see what inputs we got from our participants. So, for instance, which one looks interesting?
I haven't read them yet.
Yes.
You have to read them first.
One of them, okay. Let's see. Making information available for everyone to facilitate collaboration between different sectors. Is this something that it's close to you? No.
There's already too much information.
That's already too much information.
I could challenge that just because I like it.
All right.
What information do you need to start a new collaboration? I don't think you need anything. You have your own need. You can start a collaboration to any expert. What information? It would be nice to have a dialogue on that. What do we mean? Because I don't think you need to know so much.
That much.
You probably yourself sit with a need.
Okay.
But okay.
And water as a service. Technology can empower the consumer by providing information that can lead to better quality and bill savings. Access to information from the local utility could allow IKEA meter to translate water savings into money savings. Yeah?
IKEA and many others, water as a service. I think it's the digitalization, the platform of water.
Yeah, all right. What else? How do I go here down? So maybe read them from here because I can. All right, let's see. What other input do we have from the audience? Let's see. What else?
All of our
all right.
systems are interconnected. It's not just learning, it's also working. Yes.
Yeah, cannot more than agree. Maybe that's the most important.
Absolutely.
Start working.
Start
together.
working together, and then make sure you have a roadmap to collaborate, to bring all these elements together for the innovation ecosystem. Yes?
You see, all these silos are already quite optimized. You have an optimized operation, the train is quite optimized, but the inefficiencies are across these different actors. That's what digitalization can really help.
All right, great. Well, yes. There is a lot to learn from the telecom sector for Rosana, particularly the way they decentralize the mobile phone. We need to decentralize our large wastewater treatment plants by making them smaller and more efficient. That could be one. One of the crucial factors is that the value of water is not aligned and not widely appreciated and undervalued worldwide. That
A
happens.
price signal. Yeah.
She'll do it. That's the parting point. All right, so what we will do is we will collect all these inputs and we'll try to put it together in a nice publication, let's say a blog. And so we appreciate then all the efforts that you have done, and thank you very much to Tobias, Matthias, and also Rosanna for being here with us and sharing these insights on how you have tackled innovation to solve the issues of the sectors. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now it's time to call our friend Suchi Vora. Suchi is coming actually to talk to us about the culture of failure. How important it is actually to embrace failure, to be able to innovate in the sector. So what she is bringing us is a result of a study in the climate resilience subsector. And she will be telling us about what they found. And also, this is going to be a very dynamic mini workshop. So we hope that you keep joining us in Slido for interactions with her. All right, so Suchi, welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Now it's better? Yeah, perfect. Awesome. Thank you. So before I start, I will request you all to please play the role of active listeners. The questions come towards the end, but please engage with the presentation. I think I have about 15 minutes, which includes the presentation and conversations, but we can keep it as lively as possible. So if you want to stop me, please stop me, raise your hands, talk about it, whatever, challenge me, I'm good with that. Right, all right. So I'll start with the work that we did around failure. I like this catchy title. It seems like nobody is talking about failure. I mean, it's another taboo. We're not using the term. We don't like it. Yeah, and the question that we asked ourselves was that Tobias mentioned that there is a culture of failure already in the private sector. There's already, product design is already thinking about failure. We are innovating, it's a necessary step for innovation. It's not an inhibitor, but in fact, in the climate resilience adaptation space where I work at GRP, which is also largely water, essentially, we saw that we don't necessarily talk about it. We don't necessarily talk about failure. We try and move away from it. There is a narrative that failure is not good, bad. We're moving towards accepting personal failures, but we're still not okay with organizational failures. We're still not okay with teams failing, products failing, so on and so forth. So yeah, so we wanted to destigmatize that culture, and and this is a continuous journey. This is just like a first step where we actually want to start normalizing how we talk about failure and why we talk about it. Yeah, I mean, the world is complex. I think Matthias mentioned it. It's water needs systems perspectives. Add to it climate change, and it gets complicated. We don't know enough about what's happening with climate, and we're dealing with all kinds of uncertainties. We can't, unfortunately, peek into the future. And there is complex systems of power that we have as humans already established. So there's hierarchies, there's power structures, donors, researchers, communities, practitioners. We have power structures within different groups that impact how we engage with projects, and therefore how we engage with failure. How we did this study, we went through a secondary data and literature review. This was largely in the innovation space, in the entrepreneurship space. There is very little literature in the climate resilience space. One would imagine that adaptation is a fairly dynamic process, but we don't discuss failure. We think of adaptation as a very static, very static kind of a process. We have adapted to climate change happens and we have adapted to it, or we have not adapted to it. But that's not the case. We need to continuously learn. We need to continuously remain agile, innovative, and therefore also fail sometimes. We did some interviews with a wide range of organization heads, partners, also government representatives, aid agency representatives, and community-based organization representatives. So wide, like a cross-section of stakeholders who we interviewed, and also professors who actually work on innovation theory. So it was a wide cross-section. And then we created this model that I'm going to present, which we think is how people are thinking about failure and how they're responding to failure, or rather organizations are. And and currently we're at that point where we are sense checking this with different groups, this being one of them, the online audience also. So we've been discussing this, opening it up to conversations, feedback, and testing and retesting it to realize whether it makes sense or not. Some of our findings, we found that failure is necessary. I've said that before. It's important. We need to learn how to fail in order to succeed, right? That's the second thing. But I think for the climate space and for the water space especially, it's a privilege to fail. There is a narrative that that we don't have time. We are rushing against time, and therefore we are in a rush to find solutions. And in such a narrative, in such a space, which is where we are, where there's disproportionate impacts on some communities compared to others, it's a privilege to fail. There's huge costs to failure. And we recognize that. We need to recognize that it's not as easy as designing a product, failing, and there being just an economic cost to it. It's more than that. There's a human cost to this. There's definite conflict between that systems view and that recognition to fail. So there's definitely that push and pull of how we understand the whole system, and therefore we might feel like we are succeeding in one part, but there might be other parts where we are failing. And yeah, there are times when it just suddenly pops up on us. And there is a positive bias of reporting. We tend to report it as adaptive management sometimes. We tend to not report it at all. We are getting better at accepting individual failures, failure CVs, people putting out like a list of failures that they themselves have gone through, but we are still not good enough at reporting how we fail as teams. But the good thing is that the people we interviewed said they want to learn from it. They want safe spaces to discuss failure. They want spaces where there's no judgment to the fact that they failed, and they really want to create that. They want that space for a community of practice on failure. So that's something we've heard very strongly across the board, and we're working towards it. Just some impressions. We've obviously anonymized these points because nobody would want to be known to talk about failure. But yeah, organization heads, people in senior positions, they're very keen to create failure tolerant cultures, but there's still a question of how we do that in this space. Especially, like I said, it's a privilege to fail, and recognizing that aspect, it becomes a little difficult to create that failure tolerant structure. And these are just, I mean, I'm not going to read out all of these, but these are just some of the responses that we saw both in literature as well as stuff that we heard in interviews. How does it feel to fail? What kind of responses have people got from their organizations when they've failed? And we've kind of divided those into failure positive or failure constructive responses, and then fearful responses or failure limiting responses. Yeah, generally there's a question on funding. You don't know if organizations report that they fail, there's often a perceived question of probably losing funding. At an individual level, people fear losing their jobs. People quit if they see failure. So yeah, so and of course projects close down, and that finally affects the communities where the work is happening. So it's just yeah, there's that feedback loop kind of affects beyond just the project cycle itself. Reiterating that point around failure, we know from literature on failure and innovation, there's very clear and direct linkages that gender is a huge consideration. So women, people of color are given less leeway to fail. Similarly, in the climate space, we found that justice and justice considerations are a very big consideration why who is given that chance to fail. So yeah, I mean, questions of safeguards around failure and who's allowed to fail remain with us. And finally, this is where we've come to, that we feel like there are 4 clear drivers to failure response. There's behaviors at individual levels, behavior at group levels, at team levels. Then there's structures, like I said, power, agency, also structures within organizations and outside of it, and structures with respect to funding, even for that matter, geographical differences or regional or caste or ethnic differences as clear structures, social structures. There's culture. Tobias mentioned culture of failure. We don't have that, so there's quite a bit of culture shift needed. And finally, there's also mental models. I mean, when we think of who gets to fail and how much and why they have the leeway of fail, it's essentially a mindset shift that's needed towards at the very least. And again, these responses and a wide variety of responses can be at an individual level, can be at an operational level, or can be at an organizational level. Cultural mental model shifts are typically organizational level. Structures and behaviors can be either operational or individual. But individual shifts don't necessarily lead to acceptance of organizational failures. Yeah, so these were the 3 sort of archetypes we devised as responses to failure. So the first one is where a goal is set, and once the goal is not reached, we consider that as a failure and we move away from the project. On the second one, it's basically a 1-point limiting. So if we haven't reached the goal, there's reframing of that goal. Then if the goal is achieved, only then we move on to the next. But if the goal is not achieved, we just kind of close down. And finally, this is where we've seen where most innovation happens and most learning happens, is this continuously constructive process. So innovation is taken up as a process. I think Tobias kind of pointed towards it. I'm going to go back to your presentation repeatedly, but but yeah, thank you. But you pointed out to it. But it's essentially how goals are set, and it's fine if you don't reach them, but you keep kind of trying to identify where your outcomes are at, and as you move, you adjust how your goals move, and it's a question of shifting goalposts as and when you feel you're reaching close to them. Yeah, again, it's the new goals are identified as failure comes up. Yeah, and finally, I think we are short on time. I have like 4 minutes probably, 5 minutes maybe. But yeah, but if you could go up on Slido for the online audience and for people in the room, if you could locate yourself as an actor within this space, within the water space, if you could locate yourself where you are in this space of implementation or water, and if you can either type in on Slido or chat. Yeah, cool. All right. I'll just go back to the last one to let people get this, the value chain, and if where you are on this, and who are you accountable to, and what does failure therefore mean to you. I'll go to the next slide once some people give me an okay on getting this. Yeah, all right, cool. No, I wanted to, yeah, yeah, sure, yes. This was, I mean, the value chain was where I was, yeah, no worries. I shall go to the next slide. Yeah, I'm getting some responses, but in the room, if you feel like you want to share, we have a mic. But I understand that failure is a difficult topic. We have someone who wants to share. Can we have a mic, please?
Well, no, but very interesting. I think that the failure is extremely related to the education. In many places of the world, even doesn't want to give a grade, let's see, 0, 1, 2, 3 to the children, because they don't want to get ashamed. So, and you can see in which place of the world the startup succeed because the failure is part of the whole process, and which part of the world that doesn't accept this as a part of the. So how you connect this with the culture? Because at the beginning you said that.
Absolutely, that's a great question. Actually, I think where we were at with this question was we identified the fact that in many places we're okay with accepting individual failures, or at least we're getting better at accepting individual failures. That aspect of shame, yes, it starts at school level. Yes, yeah, it starts way at the bottom. And again, it's a systems thing. It's a culture shift, yes, but it's also a mindset shift where parents are getting better at saying it's okay. Mental health is getting important. So at an individual level, we're getting better. Where I'm kind of trying to hint at is that at collective levels, we're still way behind, especially in this space of aid and non-profit and government, public sector action. Private sector is doing much better, but then private sector also deals with products which are yes, they're results oriented, but their results are also they're very clear KPIs defined. Unfortunately for us, our KPIs are more are perceived as competition, like especially for the nonprofit space. It becomes like it is a struggle for nonprofits to say we have failed, because we're all competing for the same funding at the end of the day, right? So that struggle is very real. I may be great at accepting my personal failure, but I may not be okay with accepting that my organization or my team has failed. Is where we're getting at with our thesis. But that's a great question. Yeah. So great, thank you. Yeah, we have a few points, but yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so we have a few points around accountability coming in, and the reason why I asked that question was also that bit around who we are accountable to. If we remain accountable to our grades, we'll continue not accepting or continue feeling the shame. Yeah, but I mean, I'm just saying, if that is true, yes. But if we enjoy the process and like learn for the sake of learning, I'm just giving the example of studying and education, but in an ideal scenario, but that's the culture we need to shift, really. So yeah, great. We're seeing a lot of great loss of donors, exactly. Disappointment. Amazing. Someone has said motivation at the same time, sadness and motivation, which is great. Well, motivation. Thank you. I mean, we need to work at changing that. Great. Thanks. I think there's more typing happening, and I think we're going to capture this yeah. I am going to end with that. I'm available if you want to reach out to me. I love being challenged, and it's great. Yes, and I appreciate being challenged, so I'd love to have more of a conversation on that. I'm available on email. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Happy to talk about failure. We're a few of us, a bunch of us doing this work, at least 4 of us at GRP, and we've been speaking to a wide variety of actors in this space. Thank you.
After failing, after 4 years, they've done it today. So it's what's continuous, what you call as continuous.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you very much. In fact, thank you.
You want me to stay or do you want me to move?
Thank you very much. Let's give her another round of applause. Thank you. It's very important to destigmatize failure, and because otherwise, how can we try new things, right? How can we actually, eliminate barriers, and how can we come up with new ideas that we actually need in the sector? So it's time to call our friend Janice Pitcher. Yes, I said it. Okay, because I wanted to say Beja, and then she said no, it's Pitcher. Okay. Great. She's professor at the Michigan State University. She has many, many years of applied research and experience also with public utilities. So what we want, Janice, is that she give us a final word, some recommendations. So from the other sector, from your own experience, what can we learn from what they have done, and what should we doing as the water sector to innovate and to meet the targets? So welcome here, please. Give her an applause.
I feel like after that presentation, I'm going to demonstrate failure. So you're welcome. And this has been an amazing couple of days. I'm still not sure why I'm here or how I got here for the beginning as well. I think, here's a thought, like, don't go to sleep during a meeting, or or get distracted, because then you get given these heavy responsibilities. I've been very enriched by the last 3 days. I hope several of you have been able to join us for most, or that we've hopefully brought you into this community, right? This community of people to talk about these issues that don't get talked about enough. So I think that's one of my big takeaways. And my wheels are spinning. IKEA, so I'll start with IKEA. So love IKEA, so much fun. I installed, it just makes me think how this is so important. these problems will never be solved in these silos or in these sectors by themselves. And we had a heat pump installed in our house. I get more information from my furnace, from my pump system, electronic information, more data, useful to me as a consumer than I do from the utility. And that's okay. That's not necessarily a problem. That's a partnership. So we are seeing this transformation. But with all of that, I also want to keep thinking about consumers. And we talked about it a little bit last night at dinner, because it came up a couple times today. Consumers need to engage, right? They need to have data. They need to make a lot of decisions. They need to think hard about this stuff all the time. And one of the things I like to say, and I said it last night, is it's also okay for people to be able to take water for granted. I know that's heresy, but maybe it's okay for regular people in their daily lives to trust that the water is safe and to feel, that somebody's looking out for them and their interests are being protected. So it's a fine balance. I know we want that engagement. We want to send price signals. We want to do all these things. But at the same time, let's be careful. We're all elites, and we have to remember that we are privileged. We're here. And we have to remember that in people's everyday lives, when it comes to energy, when it comes to water, they're trying to live their lives. And they need people like us, frankly, doing this good work to try to make that a little bit better for them and not burden them, and also to respect their privacy. And we're talking a lot about data. We haven't talked a lot, though, about who owns the data, who controls the data, how it might be used. So these are all good things, but let's be mindful, right, as we think about these solutions. So do we need more technology? Show of hands. Do we have enough technology out there? Is there enough tech, or do we need more technology? There's a lot of technology. In fact, when I was first given this assignment, they were like, we don't innovate. There's no innovation in water. I'm like, are you kidding me? And so maybe I see tons of innovation, tons and tons of innovation. I look at how water has changed. All of our models, our management models are, you think about, the efficiency gains. Of course, there's this Kuznets curve, right? So once we've achieved a certain status, economic development status, we start using resources more efficiently. That's a good thing. It's been a phenomenal thing in terms of savings. And I would say that a lot of that's been driven more by technology and standards than behavior. Okay, so it hasn't been as much about pricing or price information or all those things. It's lower flow toilets. It's things that are easy to install and easy to implement and easy for people to understand, accessible technology. So I think that's really going to be a key going forward. So I think we've got a lot of technology. I think our issues always seem to come back to issues around governance and institutions, actually, and in some cases, management models. We heard from Diego about really a management innovation, right? A change of a culture that's very well defined, right? And I think that was a really critical lesson for me. I'm not sure we've arrived at optimal structures and institutions. I think that's what we need to continue to strive for. I don't think the other sectors have either, though. I still think we have, I still think we're in a process. And I do work across the sectors. Be careful not to think that energy or renewable energy or the clean energy industries have it all figured out. I'm not so sure. We spent a lot of money on smart meters, installed kind of smart, spent all these resources. I'm not sure they've actually at all achieved the promises that were made there. So, I'm not saying that they won't, but I mean, just let's be realistic about it. So I still think a lot of our problems come down to structures, institutions, and I think as part of that, though, I want to be careful about, as I talked about on Monday, and that is ideology, and being careful that not only will technologies aren't the answer unto themselves, but neither are markets, neither is some simplistic concept of market-based solutions, including pricing. water's a very essential water. It's a very inelastic good, and hitting low-income families over the head with a price, I don't think is necessarily good public policy. And I keep going back actually to what Sergio said at the beginning, the huge disparity between the sectors in terms of our commitment to universal affordable access. Why? Why in the United States do we have a universal service for telecom, but not for water? And why? Because of us. Because we think that's okay. And now, but again, water presents unique challenges. It's heavy, it's incompressible, it's hard to move it, it's expensive. Our pipe system's the way to go. I was really glad some of you raised the issue of decentralized solutions, because again, I think this is where institutions and structures and technology have to continue to work together. But I think, it's not about technology as much about adoption, general acceptance, adoption, diffusion, and those will depend on capacities, right? Capacities to understand the technology, how to implement it responsibly and thoughtfully. And as I would say though too, every time we think about these things, we should think about, is it beneficial? Beneficial to whom? And what are our normative criteria for how we evaluate the technology and its implementation? I think we have to be really thoughtful about how we view technology through an environmental justice lens, and how we can use it to really make people's lives better off. So with that, again, I mean, water is a complicated thing, right? It's so essential. Does that mean it should be cheap, or should it be expensive, right? Should it be accessible, or should it be, priced differently? And the reality is a little bit of both. That's why it's a complicated problem. I think that's true with almost every one of these questions. There's actually more than one answer. So that's why we have to be careful about not overgeneralizing about water, and being thoughtful and careful in our rhetoric. So with that, I think I've probably used up enough time. Thank you for your patience. I hope I haven't failed too miserably. It was a great event.
Don't go, Jenny. Stay here with me. Stay here with me while we close. So thank you very much to everybody for being here. Thank you to Geneva. Thank you to Joyce, Marcello, Sergio, everybody who worked, you guys that also support us, the speakers, and also all the participants that made this possible. Thank you very much. And please keep in mind, let's collaborate, cross-sectoral learning. Let's do it together and then have a great evening. Thank you very much for being here. Thanks.